Hello and welcome, everybody. Today I want to tell a story that began about 10 years ago. I decided at that time in my life, a decade ago, to disconnect from many of the closest people in my life. This included my family, parents, brothers, a lot of friends, almost everybody. And I had many friends and many people that I was connected um, to varying degrees. But at the time, I had been focusing on what I might call inner work, emotional work, a kind of like excavation and healing of myself. I've been focusing on that with a lot of intensity for a few years. And somehow it made sense at that time, a decade ago. It made sense to me. It added up that, okay, I've been doing all this work on myself. It's a logical progression to just step away from all of these old relationships, from these deeply habitual relationships where I can so easily regress into past versions of myself that I'm trying to outgrow. It makes sense to just completely remove myself. And not just to take a breath, not just to take a breather, but I decided to, like, in a very extreme way, just be like, I'm disappearing. I'm just going to vanish. And this was like in large part due to some of the people that I was hanging out with that had made these kind of choices for themselves. And I was, influenced. And so that's what I decided to do. And it was difficult. It was intense. And I look back now and cringe at the seriousness and severity of my choice, because I basically said to my family, for instance, like, "Hey guys, I'm going away for a while. You're not going to hear from me. Don't expect to hear from me. It could be a very, very long time. It might be forever." And these are like absolutely excruciating words for like parents to hear or for a mother to hear. So it just seemed to make sense at the time. And there was all of this like frustration and resentment and emotional pain that I had unearthed and I was exploring. I was kind of swimming in it. And yeah, I just felt like I needed to go and be on my own. I did it in a very extreme way, though, where I just like decided to have no contact with most of the people that I had been in contact with. And I moved to a different city. Nobody knew where I was. And when I say it now, I just like cringe as I'm saying it because it seems like, because now I'm so acutely, painfully aware of, I guess, the pain I caused those who loved me because I rejected them. And then I vanished and they cared about me in a way that I don't think I appreciated at the time. I didn't realize that my absence could create such wounds. And that might be something that a certain type of individual that's watching this or listening to this might be able to relate to. Like, I think it's really unusual for us to know how much we're loved and to know how much us not being around in some very broad sense could leave a hole in people's hearts that's like the shape of us. So there was, yeah, like there was a wound that I left in the hearts of the people that I stepped away, particularly my family, the people I stepped away from. And but to get back to just like the story of it, so I moved to a different city. I still had like a couple of core friends who essentially were choosing similar paths as me, and we're on a similar wavelength of like really focusing on introspection and emotional work. And for a number of years, that was my focus. I moved to a new city. I was pretty isolated, and I lived a monkish life, a very kind of, a very introspective, solitary existence. I focused on inner work. I was studying myself, my emotional responses to life, and yeah, just living a very small, inward focused life. And after a number of years of doing that, quite a few years, because I, all told, I disappeared for 7 years in total, basically, give or take, like an approximate 7 years. That's a long time to go off and have experiences and adventures. And eventually, I mean, there was things that came out of that that are probably gifts that I will carry for the rest of my life. A certain self-awareness and humility, because I just stopped participating in life essentially and just started tearing myself apart. And there was a humbling that came out of that. That's kind of a separate story. Essentially, I pulled away from all of these deeply habitual relationships to try and heal and to try and grow. And I got to a point where I realized many years down this road that I was kind of withering away. And while there was a certain awareness and there was a certain beauty and connection to myself that I had gotten to experience by pulling away from everything and really just being in my own autonomous space, there was something about me that was weakened and, yeah, just like withering away. And I didn't really understand it, but eventually I just started to realize. I was just looking around at my life. I was looking at myself and some of the peers who I knew who had gone on a similar path as me. And I was like, okay, something's not working. Something's not right. I'm not doing well. And a friend who I wasn't in contact with for many years, and we reconnected, and she told me, like, Miles, I've been concerned about you because you've been so isolated and so disconnected from anything that would feed you and sustain you in life. And she really encouraged me to reach out to my family again after many years of me having disappeared, and really kind of resigned myself to that life of like, man, I just don't talk to my family. When Christmases come and go, I just don't talk to them. When birthdays come and go, there's just nothing there. Because it had been so many years that just became normal. And there was a friend who encouraged me, and then there was just a voice that started growing in me that knew, it's like, Miles, you gotta reach out to your family. It's been too long. There's something there that needs to happen. Because I was trying to find some kind of inner peace or some kind of strength or healing. I'm not entirely sure what I was trying to find in retrospect. But when my friend mentioned talking to my parents after years of me being disconnected, I felt this fear in me, and it was the fear of a child. It was a regressive feeling. It was very weak, and it cowered before the idea of talking to his parents. And I realized, damn, if I have that much fear around this, I have to do it. There's something here that's making me squirm. And eventually I worked my way up to reconnecting with my family. And it was very awkward. It was very painful. I really had to own how me disappearing had affected them, because it was a wound to all of those people who loved me and cared about me. Yeah, and that was a few years ago now. And my choice to reconnect with my family has been one of the most important. And, ironically, I went off into that period of aloneness to heal. And I can say quite honestly that from where I am now, my choice to reconnect with my family is one of the most healthy and healing decisions that I've made. And I do have to acknowledge that being separate from my family for so long, um, it gave me the space to work through some things. You know, being on my own and focusing so hard on examining my inner landscape, I really got to study the places in me that had felt resentment towards my parents. And I got to be with those parts until I began to understand them, and they began to kind of scream and cry themselves to sleep. And yeah, when I did re-enter my parents' lives, it was from a really different perspective, and it had been so long. It's kind of like if you haven't been around anyone that you love for a really long time. I was just I had let go of a lot of resentment, and what I saw when I came back because of that was the beauty. And I was able to just really, really love these people and really appreciate the gifts that they had given me. I mean, they gave me the gift of life, and through all of the introspection, I guess I had started to appreciate the parts of me that are just them. Like I'm just a composition of them, and part of accepting myself has required, I think, accepting them and loving them just the way they are, not the way some child in me might have wanted them to be because he had some fantastical notion that a parent is a god, or a parent is all knowing, or a parent can telepathically read your feelings. When a parent is a human carrying the burdens of their own life and the burdens that they've inherited, and miraculously giving birth to you and helping you come into the world through all of that. Yeah, so it was a big chapter of my life, that disappearing act. And like I said, I look back now and I'm just like, oh man, why was I so extreme in my choices? There's so many more gentle paths to taking care of yourself, and kind of like having the space to breathe and find out who you are. I went to such an insane extreme with it. However, on the other side of that, I now have, I've had to patiently, put the pieces of those relationships back together, I guess, and accept how I hurt people. And that's not something that just changes overnight. That takes time and patience. But there is a depth of love and appreciation in me now that I don't know if I doubt it required me disappearing for years, but that is how I got there. I think it would have happened either way, probably just with growing up and maturing and getting perspective. But yeah, that disappearing act, it made me have such a profoundly deep love and appreciation for my family, for friendships, just for basic human connection, because I lived in a desert for so long. And the funny thing is, I'm still a very, very solitary person. I'm way more solitary than most people could sustain without going bonkers. But the difference between my solitude now and during that kind of desert period of my life where I disappeared from everybody is I don't have a wall up in me. I could spend a lot of time alone But the fact that I don't have walls up keeping me closed to love, the fact that I have an open, loving connection to like a variety of people that really mean so much to me, it's a different kind of solitude. And it just feels, it doesn't feel alone in the same way. There's a thread of connection that runs through it. At least that's how I feel. I can feel the distinct difference. Yeah. And yeah, just like disappearing for all those years, spending so much time in that kind of like monkish isolation, it's given me such a deep appreciation for the little things, for, I don't know, just like having an interaction with a neighbor or a stranger or an old friend. Yeah, my heart is just more receptive to, or it's more sensitive to the beauty of these little things. They're so magnificent. And when I was, and again, this is probably just something that happens with growing up, but yeah, there's a depth of gratitude and just deep appreciation for love and connection that is very significant, and I'm really grateful for that. Yeah, as much as I look back at disappearing from everyone for so long, and I just cringe, I'm like, oh, it did carve something out, or like it carved something into me. This deep gratitude and humility. Yeah, so that's my experience, guys. I just wanted to share it, and I wrote about that whole experience more deeply in my new book, 10 Lessons in Love. It's a collection of stories from my life, and yeah, I share, one of the chapters explores what I'm talking about today, this reconnection with my roots, and just how powerful and important and awkward it has been. Yeah, so that's it. That's my story. Wouldn't recommend disappearing in that, because that's the one thing. It's like, there's things I missed out on. I missed out on years of connection. You know, my parents aren't going to be around forever, and I missed out on years of connection with them. My brothers, I missed out on years of connection with them. One of my brothers had children during that time, and I missed out on being around during some like really sacred moments in the lives of my my nephew and nieces, and that's time you don't get back. That's definitely something that I regret now. Anyhow, that's it. That's my story. And if you enjoyed this, if you have any thoughts, you can let me know. You can like this. You can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And until next time, take care, everybody.